Are we alone in the cosmos? That was the topic of a very popular HBO investigative news show, Vice News, this past week. So what exactly did this HBO show say? Stay tuned to find out their conclusion. Hi, this is Felipe Osero, and welcome to an exciting episode of Second Earth Alternative, a show intent on reporting on the eclectic, the strange, the alternative topics not often covered by mainstream news. Now, I wanted to start off by saying that it's difficult enough to see a well-recognized investigative news organization like Vice News, especially one known for their war correspondences, actually report on a topic like UFOs. Wait, did I say UFOs? Correction, the topic was, are we alone? Not UFOs. And I guess that's my point. How can a respectable investigative news organization altogether omit the topic of other intelligent species coming to Earth when discussing the subject of are we alone in the cosmos? So, spoiler alert, for those who still haven't seen this Vice News episode and intend to, be aware that we will be unveiling the structure of the episode from this point forward. So let's take a look at how Vice News tackled this subject. They started the segment by talking about a Methodist pastor, Reverend John Fluth from Del Rio, Texas, who also works at the Arecibo Telescope in a project that is aimed to use distributed computing to analyze signals in space. That's actually not a bad start. I mean, it's kind of like watching the sequel of Contact, only like over 2 decades later. So after showcasing this Arecibo telescope, the Vice News narrator says,
"Given the vastness of the universe, it seems illogical to say that we're alone. In fact, mathematically, it's almost impossible."
The segment goes on to describe the famed Drake equation that was made to calculate the number of potential intelligent civilizations, coupled with an actual interview from Frank Drake himself, who goes on to say how much this equation has tilted towards a near certainty of there being extraterrestrial civilizations all around us. Now, at one point, he even cites this astonishing stat that more than 1 in 4 stars has at least one planet in a habitable zone. Now, Vice News goes on to talk about the potential primitive life that may have emerged from the Saturn moon Enceladus, and possibly even Jupiter's moon Europa. Not to mention the fact that Cassini actually detected organic molecules in the geysers of Enceladus, hinting that hydrothermal vents probably exist in the rocky bottom of the moon's ocean. Thus, life is likely not to be unique just to Earth, just in the solar system alone. Lastly, Vice News discusses what it means to survive a space environment. And not in a cool like, oh, let's see if we can create a plasma shield type way. We're talking about generic rocket fuel like half a century old technology way. In fact, the only experimental technology they mention is a laser light sail technology, which is only fit for small unmanned space type vehicles. And of course, they do interview a NASA scientist. But ironically enough, it's the very statement of the NASA scientist himself that solidifies the argument I'm about to make.
Is it your opinion that if all the conditions for life are present, that life will arise, or is there something missing in our understanding, something necessary for it to arise?
No, it'll arise. It's inevitable. As soon as all the materials are available and the right amount of disequilibrium is available, it never doesn't happen.
It never doesn't happen.
Okay, so follow me for a second, because something with this Vice News segment really doesn't add up. I mean, the show attempts to answer the question of are we alone by starting off with a mathematical equation that tells us water-bearing planets are extremely common. Then they talk about primitive extraterrestrial life forms that are likely already existing in our solar system, implying that life is not unique to Earth itself, and not even with nearby planetoids. Not to mention the interview a NASA scientist who says that wherever there is water, there is definitely life. So, of the tens of billions of planets residing just in the habitable zone of this galaxy alone, according to this implication, most are likely to have life. At least according to this argument that the NASA scientist is making. So, oh, and I almost forgot. The previous segment of this episode discussed new technologies like 3D printing that are revolutionizing the space industry, thus allowing us to travel more cost-effective than ever before, effectively decreasing our projected timescale for traveling to other worlds. All the while, Knowing that Earth is the only water-bearing planet we have ever studied, and in the end, it actually did produce intelligent life, you mean to tell me that not once in the entire episode does Vice entertain the possibility of intelligent life visiting our planet? Wow. I felt like I was just warped into some kind of ghost world where all these possibilities exist, yet intelligent beings coming to Earth does not. Now, the reason why I say ghost world is because it doesn't exist. It's not a logical functioning reality or a logical paradigm. In my opinion, it's a made-up version of our real world, or in other words, a propaganda by omission. It's easy to forget that it's only been a few generations since humanity has evolved from a state of riding horses to creating autonomous robots that fly to other worlds. So given the likelihood of us visiting other stars somewhat in the nearby future, in Vice News not once mentioning the counter prospect of other species coming here to Earth leads me to think what they are reporting on is not entirely truthful, or at the very least, not up to par with fair journalism. If a critical topic was purposely omitted from conversation, it follows that whatever was left over outside of what was omitted suffers a high likelihood of being a front. In other words, fake news. What bothered me the most was this sheer illogical nature of the structure of the episode. They start off with a mathematical equation to effectively argue that life exists everywhere. And then they argue how quickly we will be flying to other stars with our emerging technologies. So kind of saying we're almost there already. And they even had a famed scientist cite the stat that 1 in 4 stars in this galaxy have a planet in the habitable zone. Yet, the concept of other species coming here is not even worth mentioning. That seems crazy. And I really don't use this word lightly. We have to remember that science plays equal to similar circumstances. Meaning, if intelligent life in this planet evolved to a level that is now figuring out ways to get to other planets, regardless of how complex we assume consciousness to be, the consistent nature of forces in physics should imply that whatever is happening here on Earth could very well be happening in the neighboring water-bearing planets. And if you think distance is an actual logistical issue for more technologically advanced civilizations, remember that physics is always readjusting itself as a science. But math is always right. Because the nature of the world doesn't change, and math is just a language to describe that nature. And mathematically speaking, warp drives are possible, as well as other exotic possibilities like wormhole travel. The only planet with water that we have studied has intelligent life. Our galaxy alone accounts for an estimated 10 to 20 billion planets with potential life. But somehow, as an educated argument, we're supposed to simply reject the prospect of other nearby stars having similar circumstances? Meaning they could be just like us, but maybe 100 years ahead. And yet, despite what Vice News reports on, former governors are admitting that extraterrestrials are real. Presidents are saying they are real. Former defense ministers are saying it. Former Pentagon officials are opening up to it, and the whole damn mainstream news, including New York Times, has recently been reporting on it. But Vice conveniently is able to ignore that while making an investigative report, and I say investigative in quotes, on the subject of are we alone? Does that sound like fair journalism? Now, as a closing statement, I wanted to ask, if we conclude that the Vice News episode on the subject of are we alone is somewhat misleading because of what they omit, can we thus conclude that the source of authority in the episode itself, this being NASA, is also misleading? The Vice News unintentionally support the idea of a secondary space program by illogically omitting the entire topic of UFOs altogether while citing NASA as their source of authority. Now, before you blast me on the comment section saying this is a huge leap of assumptions, ask yourself the simple question. When in history has it ever been okay to trust the authority figure cited in what is eventually deemed to be propaganda? Alright, now to end the episode, I wanted to reveal this card in our remote viewing section. So this envelope is sealed, And the remote viewing part of this episode it's basically an opportunity for the viewers to guess what may be under this selected card. Now, if you're unfamiliar to this phenomenon, just do a quick research on the internet for remote viewing and you'll find protocols on how to attempt to harness this extrasensory perception or ability. And I have to say that with this one, there was actually like a lot of close calls. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna post all the close calls that we had for this picture. So without further ado, here it is. So yeah, it's basically the canals. So if you guys think that you saw something similar to this, please go ahead and comment below. Okay, so we do have a new envelope. The code is going to be left in the bottom, but just to give it quickly, it's a C1783HX7. The same exact codes that are in the envelope is also written on the back of the image, which is inside the envelope. And we have to officially seal this. So, okay, and here is the seal. It's not the prettiest seal, but at least you guys know that this is safe. It can't really be broken into. So now, lastly, I just wanted to give a shout out to JVC123 who really pumped this channel on social media. And I have to say, I was really taken back when this channel suddenly grew by I think it was like over 100 subs in just a few days. So that's absolutely tremendous. Just really wanted to thank you for helping Second Earth grow. And once again, thanks for joining me. This is Felipe Osario, signing out.